Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So, today we're going to be on a podcast talking about relationships. So, for about a month or so, we're going to be focused on all kinds of different relationships. Last time we were together doing this, we took a little break for Holy Week, but last time for this, we looked at 3 signs that you are in a toxic relationship. So, if you missed that one, make sure to go back and check that one out because that kicks the series off. Today, though, I want to take a shot at whether or not someone can be single and fulfilled. So I got to start today by saying that I'm a married guy with a couple of kids. And I've been with my wife, Brittany, for almost 25 years now, dating and marriage. So it's been a minute since I was single. However, my heart is for people that find themselves single or not in a relationship. And I've had plenty of people in my life over the years that are single, and I've tried my honest best to listen to them, to get their perspective, and even sent this to a friend of mine who was single for a while just to get her perspective. So I try to listen and understand how they've lived out their singleness, right? So, for example, I've asked them like questions that I've asked them how they were doing. And then they, would sometimes respond like, well, I don't know if God's going to bring me a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I don't know if God's ever going to give me a spouse. I've heard them ask me if something was wrong with them or if they had done something terrible to deserve being stuck as a single person. Right? Those are hard questions. And I've also sat and listened as they were just frustrated and depressed at not feeling whole or fulfilled. But hear me out on the being fulfilled idea, the being whole idea. So if you're single, don't think that a spouse or a relationship is going to fulfill you, right? And if you're married, if you're watching this and you're married, don't think that your spouse is going to fulfill you, right? They can't carry that weight. That's not what they were made to do. Because remember, being in a romantic relationship can be amazing, but it won't be fulfilling in the way that you might hope. And just think about every bad relationship you've ever been in, right? Because always with high hopes, right? We start, but eventually we begin to let each other down, right? Or someone doesn't live up to your expectations, or they just have annoying habits that, were okay or funny or cute at first, or they got a messy family, right? There's all kinds of things. Now this may sound odd, this next point, but relationships aren't meant to make us happy. They're not meant to make us happy. From a Christian perspective, they're meant to make us more like God, particularly romantic relationships, right? And here's what I mean. If both people want a healthy and thriving relationship, they need to exhibit Christ-like traits. They must be loving, they must be sacrificial and kind and faithful and patient, right? That's a lot of work sometimes with another human being. And it won't always make you happy, that process, or leave you feeling fulfilled or whole. So something else to remember about being, quote, whole, right? So being single does not mean you're not whole. It doesn't mean that you're broken or that you're wrong in some way, right? You need to know that and hear that. So keep that in mind when others might try to see you that way. Because I'm sure that you felt or even heard the, oh, poor thing kind of vibe from other people, right? Again, you're not incomplete, you're not broken just because you're not in a relationship. You can still be fulfilled. Because again, a marriage or dating relationship isn't the goal of life. I've heard it said by a wise man that it's better to be single and lonely than in a relationship or marriage and be lonely. So think about that. I'll repeat for clarity. It's better to be single and lonely than in a relationship or marriage and be lonely. That's really lonely. So again, from a Christian perspective, the goal is to know God and be known by him. That's relationship, right? So relationship is important, but first and foremost, to know God and be known by him and live then in loving, honest relationships with people. So vertical relationship, horizontal relationship. So here's how Jesus, he lays this out for us. In the Gospel of Matthew, right? So this is one of the guys and one of the disciples that followed him around and wrote everything down that he said. And in Matthew 22, 37 through 40, so verses 37 through 40, when Jesus was asked a question that his enemies used to try and trap him, right? So here's Jesus' response to that kind of a question. And essentially what they wanted to know was what the most important command that God gave us was. And here's his response. Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and most important command. Why? Well, because it's the greatest and most important relationship in your life, right? Orient that direction. Orient vertically first, then worry about the horizontal. And because he says, the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commands. So essentially what's he doing there? Well, he's summarizing the 10 commandments. That's Exodus 20, if you want to look those up in the Old Testament. He's summarizing those 10 commandments and saying you need to get your vertical right, and then you need to worry about the horizontal. So basically, according to Jesus, the whole Bible rests on that idea. And so according to him, what's the purpose of life? Well, love God, love others. So what practical things can you do to find fulfillment if you're single, right? If like you want to love God, you want to love others, but I also want a romantic love in there as well. What do you do? All right. So, well, the first, some practical tips, right? The first is all about relationships, but just not romantic ones. So one of the keys to finding fulfillment when you're single is to look around at the gifts that God has given you. Don't miss them, right? And with relationships, what other relationships do you have that you can lean into and share life with? For example, hear me on this. Who has refrigerator privileges with you? Or who do you have refrigerator privileges with? What's that, you ask? Well, it's people that can just roll up into your house, or you can roll up into theirs anytime you want. Anytime you're there, you can just get right into the fridge without asking, right? Like that's someone that you're close to. Because if somebody that you're not close to does that, that's awkward. It's like, hey, bro, that's my fridge, man. But somebody you're close to, right? You almost want them to. You almost want them to feel that close, right? So do you have any of those kind of people? If you don't, take advantage of your time and develop those relationships now while you have the time. You know, are they people at work? I don't know, the post office, out in town, maybe your faith community. Because Christian community is supposed to be so close, so authentic, and so sacrificial that at some point, at least one or two of those relationships should end up in fridge privilege. So think about what relationships do you have? Second, what hobbies do you currently have, or what hobbies can you develop to grow as a person? Right? If you have more time as a single person, what classes or what lessons can you take to improve yourself personally or professionally or spiritually? Right? Use the extra time that you've been given. Third, how can you find ways to serve others that maybe people with a relationship or people with a family can't? Right? Like how can you pour yourselves out into other people and invest in other people in ways that, again, people in relationships can't, people with families can't? And then lastly, how can you use this season to lean into your relationship with God? Right? Take time to discover who God is and how he really wants you to see him as first and foremost, and that we actually really do need him as first and foremost, just like Jesus said. So in this, my point in all this is that there are positives to being single. And I know that it doesn't always feel that way, but sometimes you just have to open our eyes a little bit wider and look around and consider the gifts God has given us, right? Because our culture does not prize singleness. Our culture prizes romantic relationships almost over everything. And that can be a heavy weight to bear. But again, you just have to look around and see and appreciate those positives and then take advantage of them in the season that you're in. Right? So next, this time we tackled that. And I am curious, like if you watch this, if you have any thoughts, if you have any comments, like let me know, comment in the comment section, because I think this is an important discussion to have. And I think a lot of times, even churches can overlook single people and not really consider what life is like, walking through it single and without relationship. So I'd love for you to comment and message and share your thoughts on that. I want you to join us next time too, because next time we're together, we're going to be looking at 3 reasons why many couples struggle with communication, and then what to do about it. So next, we will tackle being in a relationship next time, and communication tends to be the deal breaker. It tends to be what really gets people in trouble and cause a lot of problems because conflict is going to happen, right? And you got to communicate through that. As always, my hope, my prayer is that these things will be helpful, right? That they'll be a blessing to you, that they'll bring some clarity, they'll get like practical help in your life, and that we can take what God's word says and then actually apply that in real ways in our lives. So if this is helpful to you, man, it really helps us if you like it and you share it just to get God's word out, get encouragement and hope out there. But it was great being with you today, and I look forward to being with you next time. All right. God bless.